Hi, and welcome to Extra Serving, an award-winning podcast by Nation's Restaurant News. I'm your host, Holly Petrie. Today on the pod, we're going to be talking about new merchandise at restaurants, the NRA asking for economic relief, and Taco Bell attempting a new marketing stunt for its newest menu item. On Takeaway with Sam Okus, Sam talked with Rohini Day of Let's Talk Women and Vermilion the Restaurant. They talked about the power of food. And be sure to check out First Bite, our daily morning podcast where I dissect the top news of the day alongside an NRN editor. And now it's time to introduce my co-hosts.
I am Sam Okus, editor-in-chief of Nation's Restaurant News, and I am on the verge of my stomach growling, and I'm wondering if the microphone's going to pick it up.
I'm Leanne Zinsmeister, managing editor at Nation's Restaurant News, and I think we should have snacks.
That's what we should do.
I think we should too. Mm-hmm. I agree on the snacks part. Remember when we used to eat on this podcast? Those were some fun times.
Yeah, I mean, we record at 11 a.m., so it's like snack time here on a Thursday. We all have another big meeting right after this. This was poorly planned.
Yeah, it's definitely lunchtime, and according to my body, because I eat breakfast at like 6:30, so I need to eat lunch very soon.
That's too early. That is too early to eat breakfast.
Well, that's the world of being a parent, Holly. I got to eat breakfast when my kids eat breakfast, and they're up at before the sun is up, so yeah.
That was like you explaining to me what time your kids go to bed, and I was like, do you have to go to bed when your kids go to bed? That's so early.
Well, it's the glorious thing about parenthood, though. Kids should go to bed at 7 o'clock for their health, for their body, to get sleep. They don't know any better. They don't know that 7 to 10 exists. They don't know that mom and dad need free time from them, but that's exactly what that is. It's that precious time after the kids go down that you have free of your children. You watch whatever TV you want to watch, read a book, for crying out loud. Oh, it's mwah. I look forward to it every day.
Okay, but all of my time is spent without children.
Exactly.
That's not like the glorious thing about parenting. You could have that. Well, you can't anymore. You've taken that choice away from yourself, but the rest of us can have that all the time.
I mean, I don't need to go into all of the benefits of being a parent because I would just bore you, and it would be a very long list. And everybody who's listening to this right now knows exactly what I'm talking about. So I would bore them too.
You don't think everybody who listens is a parent? People are listening?
I'm sure there are some, but there's a lot of parents who I'm sure are listening to this right now, and they're probably like, yes, Sam, there are a lot of benefits to having a parent or having a kid. But I will say it is common for parents to say this. It is the highest of highs and it is the lowest of lows. So you get to have those highs, but you also have to deal with those lows.
Sounds terrible.
My life is all highs.
To each their own. To each their own.
My life is all highs.
I seriously doubt that. But you know what? If that's true, then good for you. You figured it out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Leanne and I get to go to the Empire State Building tonight, so I think that's a pretty high.
Literally. Very high. Very high. Didn't we decide, Holly, when we were at the NRA show, we were Googling tallest buildings in the country? Did we do that? Well, Leanne, were you there?
We did that.
That was the three of us. Okay. And I was surprised to learn that the Empire State Building is still in the top 10 of tallest buildings in the United States.
Yes, that was a weird moment that we were Googling that. Was it just in the United States or was it in the world?
I think it was the United States because remember we were doing this from the top of Sears Tower,
the Hancock
Willis
building.
Tower.
Yes,
Willis Tower. Yeah, that's it. What did I say?
Willis Tower.
It doesn't matter.
The Hancock building, which
Hancock
is a different
totally
building.
Different building in Chicago, which is also very tall and is also on that list. But we were curious because we were at the top of Willis Tower, and we were curious: is this the second tallest building in the country? Because isn't the World Trade Center now 1776, whatever? Isn't that the tallest? Did we decide?
Yes.
Anyway, this is not.
Anyway, it's the Sears Tower. It's the Sears Tower. It will always be the Sears Tower.
Yeah, Sears Tower. This is not an architecture podcast, so we can move along.
Thank God, because we don't know a thing.
And you know what? I actually know a lot about architecture. I took a whole architecture course in college. So
okay,
and I worked for an architecture magazine. True story. But I did it for 4 months as an internship, and I did not like it because I'm not good at architecture. I am good at food.
Are you good at food, though?
I'm good at eating food. So what more do you need?
I don't know. I watched you eat ribs, and you're not very good at taking all the meat off of the ribs. So I feel like you're just okay at eating food.
Jeez, shots fired. Wow.
Right?
Oh, that's just mean. Telling me I don't know how to eat ribs. Maybe I didn't want to eat all of the meat off of the ribs.
That sounds unlikely.
And there is the screen grab for YouTube.
Well, now that I know all the children on YouTube want goofy faces to click on, then
there it goes.
Oh, I've got a lot more where that comes from. I've got expressive eyebrows, so
mine are hidden behind my glasses, thank goodness. All right,
oh boy.
Well, let's talk about some food.
Yeah, let's talk about food.
What would you guys like to talk about first? Would you like to talk about some fun news or some kind of depressing news?
Fun news.
Well, it feels like Taco Bell would have been the most smooth segue, but I think we've blown that now.
Oh, we missed our segue.
Usually about food. You weren't in the mood for a segue?
Wasn't in the mood for a segue. I was just in the mood to ask you guys a question. I wasn't in the mood to think about a segue. I was just in the mood to ask about what we should do next.
That's unlike you.
I'm in a mood today.
Guess so. Well, we found out last week that that's the best way to do podcasts.
Apparently, yes. Sam was in a mood last week, and we got some user comments that were great.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I was in a mood last week.
I'm so sorry I missed it.
Last week was a sassy podcast. There was a lot of sass involved. Mm-hmm.
I bet.
We didn't talk once about Ratatouille. It was so upsetting. We didn't name our favorite animated movies.
You save the animated movie talk for me.
That's right.
And the dog talk.
I was going to say, my dog would like to get in on this.
I wish I had a dog to get in on this conversation. Maybe she does. Maybe your dog is going to talk all of a sudden. Maybe this is the day that your dog talks.
That would be news. That would get listens.
Yeah, actually, if we captured that on a podcast, can you imagine the first time there was a talking dog and it was captured on a live podcast? Wow. We'd be done with the food industry. We could do whatever we wanted.
Billionaires. Yeah.
We'd be celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's also the start of a movie. I was watching a Christmas movie last night I was watching a Christmas movie in September.
Even I think that's awful.
I was going to say, that seems like something Leanne would do, not like something Holly would do.
Holly.
Are we talking Hallmark Channel? Hallmark Channel?
No, Netflix original.
Which one?
The one with the guy from Ugly Betty.
I'm going to need more details, like the name of the movie.
I don't know the name of the movie, but it's him and his best friend, and then they fall in love together.
Isn't that the plot of every Christmas movie?
I guess sometimes they hate each other at the beginning, but
But so the best friend, he wrote this children's book about dogs, about his own dog. And so that's what made me think about this, was that the best friend wrote this book about dogs. And that's how he has all this money that he could instantly fly to this guy's house for Christmas. So that was my segue into dogs.
Wow. Well, can you dig us out of this hole?
Yeah. Because dogs were definitely on the list for today.
Yeah.
Let's talk about candles.
Candles.
All right.
Okay. Let's talk about candles.
Let's.
Come on, guys. Let's talk about candles. What do you have to say about candles?
Well, what does Texas Roadhouse have to say about candles? They're putting out a honey cinnamon butter flavored candle, and
scented, not flavored.
Sorry, scented.
Don't eat the candle.
Don't eat the candle.
Do not recommend you do that. I'm sure Texas Roadhouse recommends you don't do that as well. But it is part of a trend, you could say. This is not even the first scented candle. Well, I mean, there is a long history of restaurant-themed scented candles, I should say. But even recently, there have been several, yes, or at least multiple, which makes it a trend.
There was the Chipotle lemonade candle that they were like, it's the water candle that they were like is actually a lemonade candle because they know that you put lemonade in your water cup kind of thing. There was that candle recently.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one I can think of.
Shake Shack has burger and fry candles, and Whataburger has a spicy ketchup candle. There
you go. Yep. Lots of candles.
Interesting.
And I know that I think in the past, I want to say maybe White Castle has done a candle. It wouldn't surprise me if KFC had done a candle. I mean, well, taking a step back, not just candles, but wacky merchandise. This has been a thing for, I mean, probably forever in especially QSR, but certainly feels like in the last several years, this has been kind of a thing to do candles. And I remember once I got I think it was Taco Bell pillowcase, I want to say. I've gotten a fair amount of the wacky merchandise myself. That shows up at my doorstep as a way to share it with my audience.
Yeah.
I got a biscuit pillow from Bojangles once. There's been a lot of that kind of stuff. And hey, you know what? I'm here for it. It's fun. It's clever, I suppose. But for all of you listening who are wondering, should I too make a scented candle based on my restaurant? I don't have a hard and fast answer for you, but I would tell you that I'm here remembering all of those things years later. So maybe you should take that as a sign that, yeah, that could be something you should do too.
I mean, everyone remembers the Yule log. The Yule log is famous, the KFC Yule log.
True.
Indeed. KFC does a lot of wacky merch. I talked to Ron Ruggles about this story for First Bite earlier this week. And something he pointed out is that candles are a pretty good, like, traditional gift item. So if you know somebody who is obsessed with a certain restaurant, and, you know, everybody has their favorite restaurants, and that restaurant has merchandise, candles are usually a safe bet for gifting. So that's, you know, another point in the pro column.
I would also say, I mean, for Texas Roadhouse, honey butter cinnamon, I would wager smells pretty good. That just seems like something that would be really yummy smelling. Whereas, you know, burgers and fries, I don't know.
Ketchup.
But yeah, I mean, ketchup, I mean, when restaurants do these things, they sell out of them. I mean, it's the novelty, the kitschiness of it. And you always have these diehard fans who are very dedicated to this kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, it's goofy. I think it should be reserved to those companies that don't take themselves too seriously, like the KFCs and Taco Bells of the world. White Castle, we have much to come on White Castle in the coming weeks and months, so I won't spoil anything here, but I will say we've been talking about them a lot lately. And just thinking about Harold and Kumar, like, you know, this is kind of verging, but just a sign of a company that is in on the joke in a way that, like, can laugh with its audience. Those are the kind of companies that are putting out scented candles and other crazy merch. So if that is what you feel like your restaurant is, then maybe consider doing something quirky.
Well, and that's an interesting point, because I think all the other companies we've talked about are limited service brands, and Texas Roadhouse, of course, is a casual dining restaurant, which tend to just be a little more, I don't know if serious is the word, but formal. And so maybe that's why, you know, the candle sounds like a more traditional scent for a candle, rather than more of a kitschy, jokey vibe like the other brands do. So yeah, that's an interesting point. They also say their CEO, Jerry Morgan, said that their fans have been asking for merchandise for years. So maybe there's a demand for this. You know, if your company has a big following or a cult-like following, then merchandise is probably something that you could easily sell.
Well, and their honey butter, cinnamon, however you say it. I've never been to Texas Roadhouse, unsurprisingly. Was a really big thing for them during the pandemic, because they couldn't figure out how to give it to customers in an unlimited portion, because they provided unlimited when you go to the restaurant. And so Ron Ruggles actually wrote in his off-premises feature that we covered in First Bite, and that was on our website. He actually talked about how him and Jerry Morgan spoke about how they were trying to really give customers this experience of having this honey cinnamon butter and these rolls in this off-premises way, but still providing the experience of having it unlimited. And so they were trying to find this medium point between both of them. And that was a really interesting thing that they were talking about in the piece, was how do you find this balance between something that people love, because people love these rolls in this butter. Like, this is something that people at Texas Roadhouse go crazy over. And so how do you provide people with this experience that they love while still staying safe and providing an off-premises experience? And this is a good way.
If I could segue this into, here we go, Taco Bell. This is a keyword you just said there, Holly, is experience, right? Now, this is a unique experience you're creating for your loyal fans, that they can have this quirky merchandise that they might, yes, go sell on eBay, probably, but or they have it for themselves forever for whatever reason. But point is, it's a unique experience you're giving to your loyal guests, which is something that is key to Taco Bell's new menu stunt, is what we put in our headline, but I would call it genius idea, which is asking loyal fans to vote on which nostalgic menu item to bring back. Right? Do you see that segue?
Very smooth. Yeah, this campaign hits on, I think, a lot of key things, especially for Taco Bell. I mean, Taco Bell fans love bringing back menu items. They did a huge menu purge during the pandemic and have had success with like slowly rolling some things back out. Nostalgia in the restaurant industry is huge right now. McDonald's recently brought back a menu item from the 80s, and people are really all for it. And just having this level of interaction and having people vote is huge and a great way to build engagement for your brand. So I think Taco Bell's marketing team, unsurprisingly, really hit on a lot of good stuff here.
But you have to be a loyalty member, right? You have to have the rewards app to vote.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yes,
which, I mean, hey, it's going to encourage. And so, hey, if you love this menu item and you miss it and you want it back, join our rewards program and vote for it. Like,
yeah.
And
it's
so the
super
two
smart.
menu items are the double-decker taco, or the enchilada.
Okay.
So an enchilada and a burrito combined, or a 2-level taco.
I feel like I'm a core demographic for this nostalgia thing, because I've got to tell you, the double-decker taco is so entrenched in my brain. And here we go. You ready for this? I remember when the double-decker was launched, because I remember, and this goes back to what I was saying about the merchandise and the way this kind of stuff will lodge in people's heads. I remember the advertising for the double-decker taco because it featured Shaquille O'Neal and Hakeem Olajuwon, basketball greats. 1995, those two played each other in the NBA Finals. And the ad showed them riding a tandem bike. I am convinced this is a real advertisement, and I ask anybody to find it and send it to me, please. An advertisement of Shaq and Hakeem Olajuwon riding a tandem bike, and they were making the point that these guys were like rivals, but they put them together, and there was the double-decker taco. And as a big Shaq fan from the 90s, because what 90s kid was not a big fan of Shaq at that time, I went and got double-decker taco all the time at Taco Bell. And so here, when I saw this, I'm like, the double-decker, I haven't had one of those in a long time. So anyway, this is what they're trying to tap into. They're trying to get into that nostalgia, and I like it. I think it's smart.
I also think that the double-decker taco is going to, first of all, it's a tongue teaser, so I don't really love saying it, but I think that it's going to be better on menus for them because it requires less SKUs, because you need another SKU for the enchilada. They need the red sauce to bring back for the enchilada, which is something that they don't need to do for the double-decker taco. So that's something that could be helpful for them if it wins, that they don't have to bring any extra SKUs back. So kind of thinking that that's what they may be leaning towards. Though they both seem like pricier items, which is something Joanna and I discussed on First Bite.
By the way, I already found this ad. It does exist, and I think we should put it in our show notes of the two of them riding a bicycle. It's on YouTube, because of course it is. All of these things are on YouTube.
If nothing else in the show notes, like, hey, listen to the podcast to find out why we talked about this ad from the 90s.
Yeah, we should call this episode Hakeem Olajuwon versus Shaquille O'Neal, just to see what happens.
Definitely.
You also named last week's episode something weird in the middle of the episode, and you were like, we should call this episode this thing, and I did not call it that.
Because I'm sure you guys listen to some podcasts, and I listen to some podcasts where that's a thing that they do. They try to find the name of the podcast in the middle of it or whatever. So I don't know. It's a fun thing we could do. Ooh, we should have our listeners vote on the name of the podcast. Huh?
There we go.
Okay.
All right,
we're going to workshop that.
Back to Taco Bell.
Yes.
Fine.
Back on track. So, Leanne, what do you think about this new Taco Bell promotion?
Besides all the things I already said about it?
Yeah.
You mean other than the opinion I have shared?
Yeah. Other than the fact
what
that
else do you think about it?
Marketing move for all the reasons I already outlined.
Yeah, what else do you think about it?
Maybe we should ask Leanne what she hopes will win. What should win, Leanne?
I'm gonna root for the enchilada now, just because Sam's rooting for the double decker taco. I think we can make this a fun Sam versus Leanne thing.
All right, it's on. Let's tell Taco Bell. They need to know.
Let's tell Taco Bell.
There's a lot at stake here. I mean, we're basically Doja Cat and Dolly Parton over here, right?
There's a pairing.
Yeah,
Put that
Sam
on
and
a
Leanne,
Panda Bike.
Doja Cat and Dolly Parton, because they were both the Mexican pizza, right? Wasn't Dolly Parton?
Yes. No, I understood.
Okay.
Yeah, but they weren't competing.
That's true.
No, they were on the same side. That's true. Well, we got to find.
Pick
we're
something
like
that's competing.
Hakeem Olajuwon and Shaquille O'Neal.
Yeah. That's us.
Yeah,
We are this generation.
Let's pick something in the 90s. Let's pick a reference from the 90s.
Keenan and Kel.
Another 90s reference. So
Oh, I could keep digging. Although they also were friends.
They did just
we're
come
not.
back.
They did.
They were friends. They did just reunite.
And deep cut here,
At the
Coolio.
Emmys.
Coolio, R.I.P. today, did the theme song for Keenan and Kel. So there we go. Anyway, we're getting way far off track, so we should continue on with our
We
restaurant
really
stuff.
are.
All right, so let's talk about the NRA. Wah wah. Depressing news.
Well, they're
Not the NRA
depressing.
itself, right?
Not the
The
NRA
news, the
itself.
shit-
Just the news is depressing.
Well, the news itself
And it's
is
probably
also
only
not
gonna get worse.
depressing. If it's successful, it's not
I
depressing.
mean, if it's successful, but I mean, Leanne, you wrote this story. Do you think it's going to be successful? So the NRA is asking for economic relief.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Tell the story first.
Can I say what the story is first?
So, yeah, you describe it.
To catch up our listeners, economic injury disaster loans, or EIDLs, were given out at the beginning of the pandemic, primarily to small independent businesses who would have had a more difficult time getting PPP loans. So a lot of those loans went out in March of 2020, and then throughout the pandemic, they had a 30-month grace period before payments would come due, and those 30 months are about to be up. And what's happening is that interest has been accruing on these loans the whole time, and the interest rate is 3.75%, which is on the high side. And so now these loans are coming due, and the NRA did a survey over the summer and found that less than 25% of restaurants that receive these loans are prepared to make their first payment, can afford to do so. So the NRA sent a letter this week to the Small Business Administration asking for some relief. Some of those things are they're asking for the accrued interest debt to be eliminated so that the principal is the only thing that would be charged at this point. And they've asked the SBA to lower the interest rate to 1%, which is what the interest rate is on PPP loans. So that feels fair. So that is what's happening.
So, I mean, if it works,
great
it's not
summary.
depressing. If it's not depressing, this is a very good thing if they actually get that relief. And I mean,
Right.
I mean, is there optimism that they will agree to that? That there will be some relief, or is there we don't know yet?
It's hard to tell. I don't have a read on that situation. Reading the NRA's letter and a bit of their study, I think what they're asking for makes sense. They're not asking for the debt to be wiped out at this point. It's because these were, from what I can tell, designed to be an alternative to PPP loans. It feels fair to me that they would have the same interest rates. And just in general, as a person, it feels like accrued interest probably isn't fair either. So personally, I hope it is successful. I don't have any idea what the chances are.
I mean, it's such a precarious time to force restaurants to pay this back now, right? I mean, we are still in economic turbulence, even if that turbulence is not pandemic related. So to me, it would feel pretty heartless if in fact they were forced to start paying this back now, when it just feels like it's still so turbulent. But the other thing I would say too is, I mean, what we have learned now almost 3 years on from when PPP became necessary and when these loans all became necessary, is how much of a mess all of that was. I mean, how much fraud existed, how many bad players there were. So it just feels like, and I don't know for the EIDL, like whether there existed any kind of fraud or bad players in that too, but just I don't know. And hopefully some of the PPP folks who took advantage of that system have their comeuppance, or at least are caught if they were breaking the rules. Mm-hmm. But it just feels like, again, if like you have these small businesses for the EIDL loans that presumably were just looking for some help, and then all these PPP folks are only a 1% interest rate and they're gaming the system. I mean, there were so many stories of companies that didn't need it who still went for it. And anyway, all to say is that it would be a shame if there wasn't some relief. At the very least, like you said, Leanne, that it just is principal for now and not the interest, or that they cut the interest down to 1%. Just seems fair. I mean, whatever you think about whether or not people should be getting support all this time after the pandemic, it just seems like that at the very least you should make it equal to the PPP.
Yeah. And the other thing is that more than 90,000 restaurants have closed because of the pandemic. And it stands to reason that if things remain as they are with these loans, that we're going to lose even more. And these are going to be the smallest, most independent restaurants, which would also be a real shame to lose those at this point, to come this far in the pandemic and then have to close because you can't make your loan payments on the loans that have kept you alive this whole time.
Right.
The
loan payments are lame. I agree.
The lame payments.
Lame payments, I think, is what my mouth was trying to do there, but that's not words. So what can you do?
Well, it's similar to like student loan payments that you have to pay interest on them while you're using them. Basically, it doesn't make sense in the system. It's a broken system, but it's what people do, and so that's why that's the way it was designed. And so people think this is what you have to do. And so I'll be curious to see if the Small Business Administration actually does something with this. I don't have a lot of high hopes. That's why I said wah wah, because my hopes are very low for this. I don't see a lot of, I realize it's reasonable what they're asking, but I don't see a lot of hope that it will actually happen, in my opinion.
We'll see. I mean, it's also hard to say because, I mean, we're, under a different administration than we were at the beginning of the pandemic. It's a totally different government than the one that created these programs. And so there are just so many variables. But I assume, should be finding out one way or the other in the near future because those loans are going to come due. So.
Gotta pay them no matter what. So we got to figure out what's happening. All right. Well, now it's time for some happy news. Sam's face doesn't look very happy, so we're going to cheer him up with happy news. Happy news. Happy news. Happy news. Who has some happy news?
What? Sorry, Sam, what?
But I was just going to say, I feel like she committed at one point to doing that different every episode, but it has become the same song. So
oh, no, she's just landed on a theme song, yeah.
Yeah, that's just the theme song.
Okay, so after Create last week, I went to Dallas for a few days to spend time with my family, which is always happy. But of course, as always, I use this trip as a chance to eat at a variety of restaurants that I can't necessarily eat at in New York because they're not here. So one very exciting thing in particular is that we went to 60 Vines for dinner one night, which of course just won one of our Hot Concept Awards at Create. So it felt very timely to go there. I took my parents and my brother. We ordered all 4 kinds of pasta on the menu without planning it. We each ordered a different kind of pasta, and there were only 4. And a charcuterie board, and I had a wine flight. My mom had a glass of wine. My brother had a beer. It was a lovely, lovely meal. Another thing I want to highlight about 60 Vines that I didn't know until we went is that they can do almost anything on their menu gluten-free. My mom has celiac disease. So we did a lot of research first to make sure she could even eat there at all. And they have a gluten-free pasta. They have, I think it's a cauliflower pizza crust if you get pizza. They did our entire charcuterie board gluten-free. So it was a really wonderful experience, in addition to having like really wonderful food and wine, obviously, which is always the highlight, especially at a place called 60 Vines. So that was great. We also ate at Hat Creek, which is one of my favorite quick service chains to visit when I can. We ate at a little independent Italian restaurant called Napoli's near my parents' house, which I think is actually a small chain. But that's pure nostalgia for my brother and I, especially. And we also went to a baseball game. It's actually the reason my brother and I flew in. We realized a few weeks ago that there was a chance the Cleveland Guardians, which is our team, could clinch the AL Central that weekend in Texas. And so we booked our flights. And in addition to eating some really good ballpark food, the Guardians did win that game. And then the next day clinched the AL Central, which is happy news for me and for you, Sam.
Yes, it sure is. Cleveland sports. Here we go. So you were one game off. You couldn't watch them clinch.
No, and I did think for about 30 seconds about changing my flight, but it would have been expensive, especially because I also would have had to buy another baseball ticket and figure out my own way to the airport because my dad would be out of town. So anyway, I did not stay to watch them clinch, but we were confident after that game that they would do it the next day, and they did.
These are happy times for Cleveland sports fans. The Guardians are going to the playoffs. The Browns are, they're fine. But they have a winning record, which counts.
Exactly. And while I was in Dallas last Thursday, and we watched the Browns-Steelers game together as a family, and the Browns won. So
after you and I watched the Browns-Jets game in Denver, and yikes.
They lost epically. That was hilarious.
Fair, we only watched the last 2 minutes,
but
the last 2 minutes were so bad.
The most consequential.
It was hilarious.
As it turns out.
I loved watching it. It's a great game.
I think Holly was watching me and Sam more than she was watching the football.
I had a great time.
A lot of yelling and screaming at
was not pleasant.
A poor, unsuspecting fast casual restaurant in Denver.
But in a few weeks, the basketball season starts. Cavaliers, also very good. I'm wearing my Cavs maroon at the moment, as it happens, or wine. I don't know what you ever call this color.
Burgundy.
So burgundy, yeah, whatever. Before we move on
from, I'm wearing my Guardians navy. So
oh yeah, there you go.
There you have
Before we move on from Leanne's Texas Adventures, I do want to ask Leanne, did your charcuterie board look like this?
It looked, actually, yes. What do you know? Very similar.
We had to plug the cover of our September issue, which was literally 60 Vines charcuterie board.
It took me a second to ID that because mine hasn't come yet.
I don't
have my magazine.
YouTube thumbnail. You're welcome.
Yeah, the charcuterie boards are fun because you get to pick like whatever you want on it.
That is fun.
of a variety of cheeses and meats. And
yummy.
we chose really well.
Hooray
good
for
job.
Texas food and Cleveland sports.
Two of my favorite things.
I won't even talk about New York sports, but they're very exciting
Thanks.
right now.
Boo. Nobody cares about New York sports.
Maybe we can get Jason to guest host on this pod, and you two can just do New York sports for a week.
There we
Aaron
go.
Judge is about to break a record. Come on, guys. That's exciting.
I've heard.
It's exciting.
It would be more
I will say
exciting if
this.
he wasn't a Yankee.
Yes, exactly. You know, the craziest thing, though, is I know a few people are reporting on this today, though, that he hit his 61st home run 61 years after Roger Maris said it in 1961. Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild. I do like these kind of records, and by all accounts, Aaron Judge seems like a pretty good dude. And, you know, we don't have to go into all the whole steroid thing, but I'm guessing he's not on steroids since they test for that stuff now. So I feel like his is the most legitimate of the records because everybody who hit more than him in baseball history has been suspected of using steroids. But anyway, another podcast.
Exactly. Another podcast. That's a podcast we'll have Jason on for. All right. Well, I'm going to throw it over to Ron Ruggles, who's actually hosting an episode of Drinked-In Live. We are going to throw that episode up for you guys to listen to now. That was actually live today, Thursday, but we are going to play it for you on the podcast right now. So you can also tune in next month for the episode of Drinked-In Live, which is live on our LinkedIn channel. So be sure to tune in for that. We'll be posting updates for whenever it goes live. So stay tuned to our LinkedIn channel and we'll be posting updates. We usually have it around the last week of the month. So be sure to check around for that. And we will have everything on our channel. So please, please, please check out our LinkedIn Live with Ron Ruggles. It's called Drinked-In Live. How clever is that?
So clever.
I think it's super clever. Ron thought of it. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Ron.
Greatest thing ever.
Wow. We have a pretty low bar.
All right, so I'm turning it over to Ron now. Thank you guys for joining me today.